In 2023, the Australian federal government finally pulled its plug on its disastrous GovERP program. Their goal was to put every agency on the same SAP system, but after 6 years and $340 million worth of loss, the software was deemed unusable. So what exactly went wrong? And how did they ever think this was going to work? Stick around and see what we can learn from one of the worst ERP failures of all time. Hi, I'm Jeff Budiak with Software Connect. If you enjoy this type of content from us, be sure to like and subscribe to help the channel. Let's rewind to 2016. The Australian federal government decided it wanted to unify processes across 100 agencies. Ministers felt that having one standard system would be better than siloing everyone. So they launched the GovERP program to implement an all-in-one system using SAP S/4HANA as the backbone. It was led by Services Australia, one of the largest federal agencies in the Australian government. What resulted was an unparalleled failure. Not only did it burn over $300 million, but the software wasn't even close to finished. They scrapped the entire thing just to let agencies go back to picking their own systems. So after all that time and money, they ended up right back where they started. It was by all standards a complete disaster and one that was entirely avoidable. But before I jump into what exactly went wrong, I just want to add a disclaimer. Most ERP implementations are successful, especially for small to mid-market companies. It really comes down to choosing the right partner for your needs. And that's our goal here at Software Connect. Our service is completely free and will hook you up with custom recommendations that fit your exact needs. That way, you'll avoid the kind of mess the Australian government faced with GovERP. Just visit softwareconnect.com to get matched with something that actually works. So probably the biggest problem with the GovERP project was excessive customizations to SAP S/4HANA. The goal was to mold each agency's needs instead of using out-of-the-box features. Keep in mind that the system on its own is complex and expensive, but add in all the extra changes and it creates a monster. In another video, we break down how over-customization can wreck ERP projects like this one. Check it out to learn what to avoid. From the start, there was a clear disconnect between S/4HANA's capabilities with what the government wanted to achieve. But instead of pivoting to a better fit, they tried to force a notoriously rigid system to become something it's not. That's why, by the time they ended the program, only 18 of the 30 capabilities passed functionality tests, and none of them even reached system integration. Worse yet, the customizations took so long that the quote new technology they started was already outdated. The next glaring issue the government had was being overly ambitious. It sort of goes hand in hand with excessive customization, where the scope was just too big. Trying to implement one system for the entire federal branch may sound like a good idea, but it's not realistic in practice. Honestly, I'm surprised none other consultants, or even SAP, called this out earlier. Standardizing something that complex across that many entities was never going to work. It was a doomed idea from the beginning. That's why, after it was finally abandoned, they went back to letting each agency run its own setup. Now, I'm not saying that standardizing your processes is always a bad thing. In fact, I'd argue it's a good idea for many businesses. But across an entire federal government, there are way too many independent processes that can't fit into one system, and the leaders didn't understand that. This leads me to my last takeaway, which is the clear lack of ownership. There were 10 different agencies involved with the project, and it seemed like no one was really in charge. It's like the saying goes, you hire a committee to make you a horse, and they give you a camel. Only here, they were given taxpayer money for an ERP and created something so dysfunctional it never even launched. On top of that, there was also a ton of turnover and administrative shifts during the project. There were constant changes to ministers' responsibilities for the government services agencies, all with different priorities for making this system work. In May of 2022, the federal elections voted in the Albanese government, and Katie Gallagher became the Minister of Finance and Public Service. After reviewing GovERP, she deemed it a failure and finally pulled the plug in 2023. So the lesson here is even if you don't have a high turnover at your company, you have to make sure your executive team is all aligned when implementing a new ERP. Otherwise, you'll end up with delays, overspending, or even total failure. Looking back on this case, I think it's one of the most poorly executed ERP implementations ever, and it was funded by public money. But who's really at fault? I know SAP has a bad rap for being overly complex, and for good reason. There have been lots of huge SAP failures like Lidl and Nike. But in this case, I think the government is mostly to blame here. They were way too ambitious with their project. Tying together 100 different agencies was never going to work. Then, they tried doubling down and took a rigid system and tried to customize it, which failed miserably. The reality is, they never should have chosen SAP in the first place. This is why you should always find the best fit for your business and do as few customizations as possible. And if you want to make this process easier, visit us at softwareconnect.com to get free recommendations for any type of software. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the GovERP disaster. What do you think they could have done differently? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.